Hello, I'm Chris Barrow with the BBC News. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman says the attack on his country on Saturday posed a real test of the world's will to confront acts that threaten international stability. Our Middle East analyst Alan Johnston reports.
The Saudis are looking to rally the international community behind them in the aftermath of the attack on their oil facilities. The Crown Prince's remark is part of that effort, presenting what's happened as a challenge demanding a global response. The Saudis say they will soon produce evidence revealing Iran's involvement in the attack. The Iranians deny any responsibility for it. They've warned that if they are attacked, their response wouldn't be limited. They're signalling to the Saudis and their US allies that any possible military exchange would have far-reaching consequences.
Saudi Arabia's new ambassador to Britain has told the BBC that the murder of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi is a stain on his whole country. Prince Khalid bin Bandar Al Saud said an investigation into Mr Khashoggi's death was continuing. He was killed by Saudi state agents in Istanbul last year, which Riyadh says was a rogue operation. The European Parliament has voted to call for Britain to leave the EU with a deal 6 weeks before its scheduled departure next month. Here's our Europe correspondent, Adam Fleming.
The European Parliament's call to avoid a no-deal Brexit was endorsed by a large but unsurprising majority of MEPs. Beforehand, they'd heard from the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. He said his meeting with Boris Johnson earlier this week left him with the impression no deal was a real possibility. Mr Juncker said he'd prioritise the unity of the EU, suggesting he'll continue to support Ireland rather than siding with the UK to get a deal.
Unofficial results from Israel's second general election in 5 months indicate that the two main parties are deadlocked. With almost all votes counted, it appears that neither the Likud party of the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu nor the rival Blue and White Alliance has a clear path to forming a coalition government. From Jerusalem, here's Barbara Plett-Usher.
The election has left Israelis confused and uncertain, bracing for fractious coalition talks that will test Benjamin Netanyahu's political instincts. The veteran survivor of Israeli politics has suffered a blow. Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't able to muster the majority to form a government. If the exit polls are right, his Likud party may even have lost seats to the opposition. That leaves him fewer options to defend against possible indictments on corruption charges. But he's nowhere close to admitting defeat.
At least 23 children have died after a fire broke out at a boarding school in Liberia. More children are missing and are feared to have been killed. The blaze broke out at a boarding house attached to a mosque on the outskirts of the capital, Monrovia. You're listening to the latest world news from the BBC. The Zimbabwean government says it's deploying doctors from the armed forces at hospitals to minimise disruption caused by striking health workers. They've stayed away from work this week to protest against what they say is the abduction of a doctors' union leader, Peter Magambei. A government official told the media there was no evidence that Mr Magambei had been abducted, but said an investigation was underway. South Africa's Constitutional Court has ruled that the use of corporal punishment at home violates children's rights. The court said there were effective ways to discipline a child without using physical force. It upheld an earlier High Court ruling from a trial involving a father who'd been found guilty of assaulting his 13-year-old son for watching pornography. The Deputy Speaker of South Korea's parliament has joined a growing band of politicians who've shaved their heads in protest at the new Justice Minister. It's a traditional act of defiance in South Korea. Michael Bristow reports.
Lee Ju-yong had his hair cut off outside the presidential residence in Seoul. Other opposition politicians have done the same. They're angry at last week's appointment of the new Justice Minister Cho Guk, whose family face a series of corruption allegations. The minister's daughter is said to have got into medical school with the help of forged documents. His family are also alleged to have invested in a company that went on to win government contracts. The row is particularly heated as South Korea's current government came to power after the previous president was ousted for corruption.
And scientists in China have found motorists listening to high-tempo songs drive faster and more erratically. The study used a driving simulator to monitor how many times participants changed lanes on a motorway. The results suggest that listening to music below 80 beats per minute, such as Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven, is comparable to driving in silence. But high-tempo heavy rock led motorists to speed up and change lanes much more often. And that's the latest BBC News.